Okay, on today's video, we're going to talk about call tracking, specifically how to determine if Google's call tracking system or tools that they provide to track calls you have coming in from their campaigns that they're that you can run through the Google Ads platform. Whether you should use that or should you use another a dedicated call tracking platform or software like Callrail, like call tracking metrics, Mongoose metrics, and to decide which one's better for you. And there's definitely a answer here you're going to walk away with that's not, you'll know for sure basically by the time I get done explaining what ultimately what I use, and I've tried pretty much everything, saw the faults with both of these, and then so you can actually know what to do then end in the video. Of course, there's the big factor that is probably in your mind right now most of all, why you're even, if you're interested in this topic, is why should I pay for something that Google is giving away for free, right? That's the big question here. And I'm going to explain why, and to cut to the chase here, why you do want to spend money for these call tracking softwares, one of which, Callrail is the one that I always use and recommend, and I'll get into that, why Callrail I feel is the best one that you should use, and the other ones you should forget about, why it's worth the money, the $50 a month or what have you that Callrail is going to charge minimum, which is the entry point, and which works for most people. Unless you're already doing like more than $10 million a year in sales, then it's more, but then, obviously the cost doesn't really matter a whole lot to you at that point. Why you want to pay for that fee, why you want to use Callrail, why it's actually better than Google's call tracking system. Google, don't attack me. I'm not saying your system is bad here. This is going to make people want to spend more money through your ad platform. So for somebody who is a micro business, I want to say your solution is fine, but still at the end of the day, there's several reasons why I think your call tracking program should be like Callrail's, and I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, getting into the meat of this. So long story short, if you, and to back this up, if you get calls, so basically, if more than 10% of the people that buy from you now end up calling you at some stage of the process, either to make their order physically over the phone by giving you their credit card number, or if you don't take orders by the phone, 10% at least of the people actually call at some stage of the process before they order from you, then you ought to be doing call tracking for your PPC campaigns, okay? Why is this? The big thing that people don't consider, other than just to, people, they think all call tracking is good for is to see if I'm making money or not, which, obviously that's an element to call tracking. But the bigger thing is the Google's ad system runs off of an algorithm. They're constantly trying to figure out, you're entering your space, trying to advertise there on Google for your keywords. Google's trying to figure out on their end, not only who should be shown, because there's only 4 of 20 companies that are trying to get into those top 4 ad spots, but more so, should it be you or your competitor that should show up for a certain keyword? Because basically they watch everything that each user does when they click on your ad. They watch to see if people bounce back to Google. They also look at all the traits of each user so they can identify, okay, on a keyword, if they have this, and this trait, they'll have your ad shown because it actually serves those type of users better than these other users over here, which your competitor actually does a better job at serving them in terms of not getting them to go back to Google and click on something else, which indicates a situation that's less ideal for the user. But more so I mentioned how, Google's constantly on the hunt to just promote what, serves their users the best, because that makes people want to use Google long term, okay? More so than any short-term money that they want to make, that's what they want to do. One of the ways, like I said, that they determine that, so your goal always is to set up your ads better, fundamentally, and putting more work in and do it smart in a smart way, so you can actually end up so that your ad and landing page combination gets a better user experience to the other person. So Google wants to promote it, and they charge you and they reward you by charging you less for those clicks. One way that they measure that is they just see if somebody clicks back to Google, because about half the people don't do any kind of conversion tracking at all. That's the only metric that they have to go on. The more data that you can give Google to, assuming that you obviously, to back this up, have an actual good ad, landing page, and campaign set up, the more data you give them to show that it works, the more that they're going to want to charge you less, and the more they're going to want to promote your ad versus the competition's here. One of the ways that you do that is through tracking any of the forms, contact forms on your site. I do recommend doing that on your landing page and also on your main site. But also, I also recommend, of course, your cart purchases. You do that through your Google Ads account, through the conversion menu. But also now the phone calls. You track as much as you possibly can. But those are the main things that you want to track, because those are the things that really matter. All the other stuff, you can kind of take it or leave it, but those are the important things that you need to track. And you do want to track them all. And yes, it might be a pain to figure it out, but if you are going to want to make this work, you got to put the time in to have a better campaign, because if you just show up, you're going to get everybody else's results, and everybody else gets crappy average money. If you want to make a lot of money, you do better than them, and then you set up the tracking so that Google can see that you're doing better than them, so they can reward you. Not only that, you'll have more ability to see what didn't work, because it's a rare situation you'll turn on the ads and they just work and you're done. You got to be able to see the 80% of the account that doesn't produce the ROI that you want, and then downgrade the bids or just shut it off. Generally, it's just downgrade to a certain percentage to make it where it will still be worth it for you to do. And that takes conversion data, and the more conversion data that you have, the better off you are. So realistically, if you have an e-commerce site, you could get by with just tracking the purchases, but even in that case, I still would recommend, and even if you don't take orders over the phone, I would recommend you do call tracking, because it still helps Google out a little bit more, understanding the users. So, because a lot of times people will call, right? And then they'll purchase a long time from now, 4 or 5, 6 months from now. Google will now know that person with those certain traits now, they should send more people like that to your ad and to your landing page now than they had before, because you're giving them a positive feedback loop and an ability to understand to do that. It's, ultimately, if they don't purchase right away, they understand that user should be sent more than another user who didn't call, if you get my point. So 10% or more of the traffic, if you expect them to call at a certain point, whether they're buying online, going to be buying through the phone after they call or not, I would recommend you do call tracking. And then going a step further, that there's different types of call tracking that you can actually do that a lot of people don't think about. And I would recommend going to as close to the bottom of this list as you can, because the more data you give it, tying into what I was saying before, the better results you're going to get, because the more data you're going to know and be able to use to refine your ads. Certain states that'll produce it at a different level of return. You can adjust your bids based upon whether one state got more calls than the other, so on and so forth, or times of the day, or days of the week, or gender, or age, or income demographics, which you all can adjust bids on in your Google Ads account, which if you want a quick, easy way to be able to have an edge on your competitors, you just use your data to the best you can, and you set up good tracking, so that you can see where everything's coming from within each one of those sub-metrics there. But at the very bare minimum, when you're talking about call tracking here, you can do just whether or not someone calls or not. So it's very binary there. That's the most simplistic form of this. The next thing you can do is you can do appointment, tracking, or tracking whether or not a lead is qualified. Okay, so in other words, when they call, were they a qualified lead? And there's a way to feed that back into your account using a process which is called offline conversion tracking. And you can find a video on my channel about that, or just search it online. But that gets you a little bit better quality data and just more data in general to work from than just whether or not somebody called, and would recommend you go and do that because, again, you'll have better ability to adjust what parts of the account to do less of and do more of. Your goal, for me, I'm just constantly looking at what's producing less than average results, taking the budget from there, and then putting it towards the part of the account that's producing above average results, and with that, you'll be able to walk up your results more and more over time. But that's a more sophisticated way to do it, and if you want more results, you go a little bit further with your efforts there. To do this, you got to have, though, by the way, you got to be able to identify when somebody calls a way to grade that lead so that you can tell Google later on that that lead was a good quality lead or it was a bad quality lead. And you need a call tracking software to do that, because if you use Google's call tracking software, guess what? You can't do that because there's no recording. All you can do is just this first simplistic form of call tracking here, which is whether, it's just a yes, no, did they call or did they not call? They have a different thing on there where you could say if the call lasted over 30 seconds or 60 seconds, it'll trigger, and if not, it won't trigger. But still, that doesn't actually weed out people that are looking for jobs, or people. You think that if they read your ad and it says buy red shoes here and they click on it, that's like what they want. Half the people don't even read the ad, which is why you can't use the ad to weed out people. The game is to have the ad only show up when you know that person's likely to buy, and then the ad is just a secondary way to kind of weed people out, but it doesn't weed people out, it gets people to click on it. It entices people more than anything. So anyway, with all that, for that reason, I'm going to say right off the top that you use call tracking, and Callrail is the software I would recommend. I use it all the time. If somebody says they want to use a different one, I say Callrail's much more reliable and less hassle to work with. When you're talking about marketing softwares, you want to just go with the tried and true, because later on what you have is you run into a situation where something breaks, you contact support, they don't help you, and then you're stuck. Okay, that's not going to happen with Callrail because they're the number one provider. It's not that much more, so there's really no reason to go with anybody else. So anyway, with that software, you can what it has is you'll see when you log in, you set up call tracking through there. Yes, you can feed in data about so that in your ad account you'll be able to see if someone calls or not. More so than, did they call for 30 seconds. You can feed in there, they were a qualified lead, and then you can do better adjustments because you have better quality data that's more going to tell you, it's going to be give you more accuracy, if you will, which Google's algorithm will also be able to use at the same time, like I was talking about before. What actually how that works is there's a call recording, so there's just a dashboard, and it says you got so many calls today, and you can listen to the whole call as it went. And then what happens is you'll say, okay, that call, it wasn't qualified. And you put like a thumbs down. Oh, that one was qualified, thumbs up. And then once you've done that, once a month is what I normally do it on a once a month schedule. So you have to set up an offline conversion goal in your Google Ads account. And then once a month, you take what is called the GCL ID or Google Click ID, which shows up right next to each call in Callrail, of the ones in which when you listen to it, you verified it was a qualified lead, and then just upload the GCL IDs to Google, and then what you'll see then, bang, right there in your account, you'll see what campaigns delivered the qualified leads versus the non-qualified leads, the keyword that did it versus not did it, time of the day of the week, all that stuff I talked about before. But Callrail gives you that capability. And so for that reason alone, I'm going to be using Callrail every time instead of what Google provides for free. And the ROI on a $50 investment into the Callrail, you got 50,000 times return, whatever, long term when you think about it that way. But going further here, you can actually get even more results for your money even yet if you haven't justified this to yourself already. You can do lead scoring. So so the dumbest way to do it is, did somebody call or not, to decide whether an ad should run or not, or what you should be paying to have that ad show up for that particular user that you're advertising towards. Then you can do, were they qualified or not? Then you can do, okay, how qualified were they? On a score of on a scale of 1 to 10, were they a 10 because they were like the most likely to convert, or they like the least likely to convert, being a 1? You can feed that data in as a conversion value using the same process I talked about before, and then basically you'll adjust your columns inside your Google Ads account once you've uploaded the conversions and your lead scores. And then instead of seeing qualified, not qualified, you can see that the total lead score, when you added it up, all the scores of all the leads you uploaded, you'll see under conversion value, and you can use that to adjust your bidding and so forth on a keyword by keyword basis, so on and so forth, which gets you a little bit better, more accuracy, and therefore better results. Google matches you up with better customers, so on and so forth at the same time as well. Going a step further, you can do offline sales. So if you actually take an order by phone, so this is obviously only applies if you're doing this, but if you take a order by phone, which by the way, if you're wondering whether or not I should take an order by phone, the people say, and I don't blame them, we're the same way here. I don't want to take a credit card over the phone, nor do a lot of people, because it's a liability issue taking the credit card number. You may not have a problem, but that person may get their credit card stolen, and then now they're blaming you. You didn't do anything. So therefore, it can be a hassle. But I can tell you, for the people that do take the credit card over the phone, generally speaking, they're making more money overall because it's convenient for the user. If you're going to think, I'm just going to tell them to go back to the site and order, that seems simple to you. What seems simple to you isn't simple to somebody else who is not tech savvy. They type slowly. They're lazy. They don't, so on and so forth. By the way, there was a survey done that you can find this online. People would rather, on average, clean a toilet than to fill out a form on a website. So you apply that to this. You tell them to go back to the site. Okay, there's a 90% chance they'll go and finish the purchase, but that extra 10% that you just lost because you didn't want to take their order over the phone to make it easy for them, that's significant money. So they call that virtual terminal, where you can plug in on take the credit card over the phone and then charge the card, and then whatever there. Some people have even a quoting system where they have to call, get a quote. They'll send them the quote by email, whatever. But long story short, you can listen to the call so if you make the sale through the phone, through the virtual terminal, when you listen to the recording, you can see, okay, there was a purchase made, and instead of just uploading whether that lead was good quality, which you can do, but you can also set up a separate goal for the ones that did buy over the phone. You pipe in that data in, which gives you even more ammo to make your ads better and let the algorithm that Google has match you up with better and better results. Google tracks everything all their users do all the time, and they can see all the things that you've done ever. And so when somebody converts, they try to match up with their thousands of data points that they have on all their users, and they see, which is how machine learning works. It eventually learns, okay, people with this, and this trait, 80% of the time, if they have these 5 traits, they bought. And so therefore, if they have these 5 traits, when they're searching for that keyword that you're advertising on, they should ultimately always be shown your ad, never be shown your competitor's ad, because that's what those users want, and that's ultimately then what helps you. So you obviously need to have some time. It takes time to make PPC work, because Google's got to have data to do that. No matter how good your ads are, they won't know they're good until you've proven it to them through the data. But also more than that, they also need data, and then you therefore also want to give them as much data as you can. That would be something, though, if you take the orders offline through the phone, I would be piping that data in, and I would just be doing it in general, by the way, just for the reasons I said, because you make more money than sending people back, forcing them to make the sale or put the purchase in that way through your site. But going one step further yet, you can do the sales revenue. So when somebody calls and you take their order over the phone, there's they spent XYZ amount. Well, you can have that piped into the ad account, Google ad account as well. so that in the conversion value column, when you modify your columns, you can see on the keyword level, time of the day level, state level, whatever, how much offline sales revenue you got. So instead of adjusting your bid based upon whether or not someone bought, you can adjust your bid based upon how much they spent and what the ROI was on that particular keyword, so you know to push that keyword more or less. Okay? So the more data you feed in, the more detail you go into with your call tracking that is possible for your business, the better results you'll get long term. Okay? So for all this 2 through 5, that's the reason why I would recommend you use Callrail. Technically, you could get by, if all you care is do they call or not, you could get by without using Callrail. But there are some other distinct benefits of using Callrail that I'll also mention here next, to also explain why I always use it on every client that we have here anyway. Google's system, just to quickly go through the pros and cons here. The pros are the obvious. It's cheap, really it's free, right? And it's easier to learn. It's very, very, simple, if you will. Well, and that's debatable to how much if it even is easier. I say easier because there's less options. There's like, a simple, wizard, if you will, want to call it that, to set up the call conversion goal in your conversion menu on Google Ads, and then you're done. Whereas in Callrail, you have to learn where all the stuff is. There's more you can configure that gives you more options, but then that also can confuse a person, which is why I say easier for Google, okay? But on the flip side, Google's cons are there's no recording, so I talked about that, and therefore with no recordings, you can't do high-level importation of call quality or lead quality data that you would want to take advantage of so that you can get the most results for your money out of your ads. There's no layering, so I mentioned that I'm going to be doing, if I take sales over the phone and I want to get the absolute maximum results, I'm going to import the sales revenue from those purchases. And I'm also going to import a lead score for any lead that didn't result in a sale, so I can also get that data as well. So I would do 2 layers of call tracking data there. Actually, I would do 3 layers. I would also do whether they called or not. Instead of a conversion just for calls, a conversion that imported what the call was worth on a scale of 1 to 10, and then have a goal set up just for what the people who bought through the phone and how much they spent, and I'll use all that individual data to help Google and to help myself decide what should be weeded out of the account, what should be doubled down on. There's no offline revenue tracking, so that's just another way of just saying what I said here. There's no way when somebody if you do take orders through the phone, how to actually, when that person purchases, tell Google how much that they actually spent. So, a call isn't just going to be valued as the same as every other call. Every call is going to be worth a whole heck of a lot different than every other call on average, and there's no ability to tie that data together so you understand if you should be spending $10 for a keyword or $3 for a keyword. That becomes a lot more clear with the revenue data coming in, especially if you do a lot of offline orders, by the way. If you do more than 10% of offline orders, you really, really want to be able to get your revenue data from those offline orders into your account, because it makes a big, big difference at that point. Anytime somebody has more than 10% of their orders coming through the phone, it's specifically itself, I require my clients basically, or force them to do this offline conversion tracking process and get it to work for them. So anyway, with all that said, now Callrail, the pros and cons are basically just flipped. Whatever was cons are now pros, and whatever were pros are now cons, with an addition of a couple small things I just want to mention about Callrail here. I touched on it before briefly, not to say, don't attack me, Google, but I've had more reliability getting the actual each call that needs to be tracked, call by call, through Callrail, which is why most of the people in the ad agency world that does PPC management use Callrail. They don't use Google's inherent or definitely more than Google's call tracking system that they offer for free inside their conversion menu inside their ad system. And so if you just even if you're just tracking whether they called or not, it's more reliable to use Callrail, as I found. So therefore, it's worth the $50 alone just for that, let alone all the other stuff I said about offline conversion tracking and importing information about lead quality and so forth. But the other thing is, as a side note to all this, we're talking about PPC here, but you can track all your other sources. So you can set up call tracking and import if somebody calls from Google Organic, they call from a Facebook ad, they call from whatever traffic source, Callrail will allow you to track and rotate the number that the user sees, so therefore you can track the source of how many people who call from each source in Callrail, and you can use that data for that purpose as well to evaluate not just Google Ads, but all your traffic sources. And you can import that into Google Analytics. So in Google Analytics, you look at all your traffic sources, it'll start to tell you how many calls you got from each source, specifically with that. And you can actually import data about lead quality and offline sales that you make. Like I mentioned, you can do with Google Ads. It's a lot more trickier to do it through Google Analytics, but you can actually do that through Google Analytics too, if you were interested in that. But every time I'm getting it and doing call tracking for a client, I'm automatically just going to hook that client up with the side benefit of being able to pipe the call data into Google Analytics, at least to the level of did they call or not, the first thing on this list here, because I never look at PPC through a vacuum. I look at how the overall sales are doing for the company and how traffic's doing, and I look at more than just PPC traffic because without going into too much detail about this stuff, if you have organic traffic all of a sudden get cut in half because of a penalty, well, that's going to affect our PPC somewhat, because the PPC and the SEO are interlinked more than you think. Having your be able to be found organically will deter. A lot of times, later on when they come back, determine whether they're going to click on your PPC ad when they see it eventually later on or not, and a lot of other small things. It's actually shown in studies that I found that you'll make more sales overall, even if you rank organically first, you'll make a higher click-through rate on your PPC ad if you rank organically as well. Okay, you actually make more money overall, even if you rank first to have your ad there, which is a side thing. But without getting into too much more detail about that, it could go on for quite a while. There's stuff that to be good at your online marketing, you can't just look at one channel by itself, because a lot of times the channels, they not only they start out in one place and they end up in another, but it kind of works in a synergistic way. So I'll just keep it to that simple and to that point here. And but you can track your calls through all your traffic sources through Callrail or another call tracking provider if you really do want to use a different one for whatever reason. Pipe that into Google Analytics and then see your call data there. And but in addition to having Google Ads, having all that call data there, it's the same cost. So why not do it anyway? But anyway, that's everything in a nutshell. Comparing Google's call tracking system to a Callrail or a call tracking software like Callrail. Hope you enjoyed the video. I have a lot of other videos like this on this channel. If you like to learn about different PPC money-making strategies, you should check out my other videos. I have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build campaigns the way that I do it here to guarantee our clients' results. You should check that out. Maybe that's of interest to you as well. And if you have any questions or comments, anything that you think I should have covered here about call tracking and didn't, leave me a comment. I get back to everybody who leaves me a comment on this channel within a day or two. But I hope that inspired you to do some call tracking, take it to the next level, what have you. And to use a Callrail, because it is pretty valuable in the grand scope of things, of how you're going to do performance-wise with your PPC long-term for your company.